This is the download from Sounds Profitable, the most important news from this week and why it matters to people in the business of podcasting. I'm Gavin Gaddis, in for Manuela Bedoya.
And I'm Shreya Sharma.
The download is brought to you by Magellan AI. Track the trends in spend, ad load, podcasts on YouTube, and more with Magellan AI's advertising benchmark for Q2. Available now. You can find a link in the description or visit magellan.ai. This week, a new study looks at podcast listeners' consumer habits. CBS has almost sold out of Super Bowl ad space already. 60% of brands say they'll increase spend in 2024, and a Q3 earnings roundup. Let's get started. This Monday from Brad Hill at Rain News. Signal Hill Insights and Triton Digital have teamed up on a new large-scale survey. This first release, built from a study of 12,000 respondents, is part of a larger study in the Triton Digital Demos Plus product. This section of the study aims to connect consumer taste to listening habits. 4 types of listener are identified. Heavy listeners, people who listen at least 5 hours a week, sports podcast listeners, music podcast listeners, and new listeners. When compared to the average podcast listener statistics, heavy listeners are 63% more likely to visit a quick service restaurant on a daily basis, 24% are more likely to have attended a gym in the last month, and 31% are more likely to see a movie in theaters at least once a month. A quote from Signal Hill Insights Chief Insights Officer Paul Riesmandel, quote, "These data points show how podcast audiences are particularly leaned in for specific consumer verticals. For instance, I was struck by just how much more heavy podcast listeners visit quick service restaurants, which is a real opportunity for these brands." End quote.
Last Thursday from Melissa Myers on Marketing Brew. Paramount spokesperson Bridget Darcy says CBS has just about tapped out their Super Bowl inventory, far earlier than usual. Last time around, NBC Universal said they sold out space just 10 days before the match, with CBS reporting a similar time frame for 2021. The 2024 Super Bowl is also slated to be the first that will have an altcast, which is an alternate broadcast, on a network other than the one that owns the rights, as Paramount's Nickelodeon will be hosting a kid-oriented version of the game. Advertisers who bought into CBS Super Bowl ad space get access to both feeds. So while CBS might be running out of space, it is worth noting that sports-adjacent podcast content around the Super Bowl, both before and after, has consistently performed well. This Tuesday from Laura O'Reilly at Business Insider. New research from Ubiquity, built from a survey of 92 respondents at multinational advertising companies, shows cautious optimism for 2024. 60% of respondents plan to increase their budget next year, a marked increase from the 29% who said the same last year during fears of an economic downturn. Only 7% of the remaining respondents not increasing their budgets next year said they intend to decrease spending. Video is expected to get the bulk of growth next year. On that subject, it's worth noting that studies, including Sounds Profitable's own The Media Moves the Message, show that podcasting needs to be in that conversation. The leading advertisers in podcasting perform significantly better in lower funnel metrics with podcast listeners than the leading advertisers in TV and radio with their consumers. The addition of podcasts to a multi-channel media mix also shows significant mid-funnel effects.
Once again, it's earnings call time, and podcasting's got some highlights. First up, this Tuesday from PodPod's Reem Macari, Acast has posted their Q3 interim report, and things are looking good for the company. Acast report shows they have increased its net sales by 32% year over year, with CEO Ross Adams largely attributing the positive growth to North America. The region has undergone a 55% year-over-year net sales increase, double the growth in Europe and other markets. In addition to new podcasts, acquisitions, and product launches, Acast also reports operating loss has decreased 57% year-over-year. Meanwhile, at SiriusXM Media, podcasting remains a tailwind, according to CEO Jennifer Witz on their earnings call this past Halloween. SXM's Q3 podcasting growth hit 28%, with their programmatic side seeing a 97% year-over-year increase. Pandora's profits are up 4% year-over-year. And finally, iHeartMedia's earnings call shows broadcast radio earnings are down 8% year over year, but podcasting revenue is up 12%, hitting $103 million for the quarter. Finally, it's time for our quick hits. These are articles that didn't quite make the cut for today's episode, but are still worth including in your weekend reading. This week, Making the Case for Podcasting by Tom Webster. Tom tackles the ever-present problem of making an appealing pitch for podcasts to non-listeners. Integrating Powerhouse, Podbean and Descript simplify podcast publishing. Next Thursday, November 16th, Podbean and Descript will be hosting a free hour-long webinar. Podcasters can better connect to their audiences with insights from our latest fan study from Spotify. The study includes findings about the busiest time of day for podcast listening and the efficacy of cross-podcast promotion. Adaptive Podcasting Open Source Release. The BBC's Research and Development Department has published research and an open source tool investigating the concept of dynamically built podcast episodes using listener data. And that was The Download, brought to you by Sounds Profitable. I know we went through today's stories fast, so be sure to check out the links to every article mentioned right in your podcast listening app or on soundsprofitable.com. And thank you for sticking with us while we bring you the top stories you might have missed from the past week. I'm Gavin Gaddis.
And I'm Shreya Sharma. Our producers are Brian Barletta, Gavin Gaddis, and Tom Webster. Special thanks to Art19 for hosting The Download. And thanks to you for joining us. Robot?
Download complete.